Okay. This is not the Cigarette Burn series. This is another series. This is called New Movies That Are Worth Watching. Um, they will not be removed. Maybe a way in the future, after 2 years of this, they'll be removed because they won't be new movies anymore. They'll just be cataloged. Um, but I'm going to talk about a specific movie that I was very fortunate to be able to see tonight. And what I'm talking about with new movies are movies that are, if you're going to see, because I know that most people can only see a handful of movies a year. They're not like me, and they can see an infinite amount. I get that. You're busy, you have kids, you have all kinds of stuff. What my recommendation is if you like this particular genre of film that I'm going to talk about, then this is a movie that you would want to see in that genre. I will try to stick to the major genres of film, um, probably 1 to 2 dramas a year, one comedy, and then goes down one horror, science fiction, if there's anything in the rest of the canon worth talking about. Now this year there is a horror film that is definitely worth talking about, and this does contain spoilers, so I am going to let you know that in advance. So if you want to, I will give you a few seconds here to be able to turn off this because I'm going to put in my headset so we can talk about this. And the movie is Us. Okay. Now, in particular with horror films or even like the Marvel films, people don't want to talk about the spoilers, okay? So let's clear that up right away, right now. If you want to know everything that you don't know, then don't listen to this particular podcast. I'm going to be talking in depth about the type of elements that are in it. It will be more clinical than it will be about the actual story and how much I quote unquote liked it. That's not what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about kind of a review slash critique. Okay? So there will be some things that you will not know about the film because it's not in the trailer. So that's why I said there are spoilers. Will I give it all away? Absolutely not. But I do want to make you aware that there will be quote unquote spoilers in this. So, like I said, if I talk about a Marvel film or something that is highly anticipated that you want to see, but you want to go in with a blank slate, then please don't watch this. All right, now I've covered it 3 times, so if you do, it's your own friggin' fault. So, let's get started. So, Us is the second film by Jordan Peele, as far as I know. I don't think that he has made another one. I believe his directorial debut was Get Out. Okay, so we're talking about the next film, which is called Us, which is about a family that meets a doppelganger version of themselves, except the other version of them is quite evil. Okay, they want to harm them, the other version. Okay, so there was some really excellent pacing in this particular movie. Okay, especially at the beginning. He knows exactly when to cut off the pacing and go right to the meat of the story, and when not to. That's a very good sign that he is a very, very good director. Okay, I do want to make something clear. I don't personally believe this one was as good as Get Out, but that's just my personal opinion. I believe that Get Out is kind of as far as what Jordan has done right now in a league of its own. Okay, Us is definitely a good movie. There's definitely no doubt about it. It is definitely worth watching. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking about it. But this is more of what I would call a Criterion Collection movie. Okay, which means that it is very good, but it is not the premier films in that director's showcase. Okay, so again, there are only 2 films right now. So there you go. So I mean, and I honestly, my personal opinion is that Jordan Peele has one of the greatest potentials to be a master, even possibly a premier director of all time. Okay, a master director is a category that I associate with directors that are very, very talented. Okay, very, very talented, which means that if you watch their films, there's a 90% chance that you're going to like them. Okay, those are like Scorsese, Spielberg, Zemeckis, who else? I don't know. I'm drawing a blank here. Shyamalan, to a certain degree, he used to almost be in the upper class of directors, but his film quality is kind of degraded. I am going to watch Glass again just to make sure that I'm not missing something fundamental from it, because this Glass, just like this one, Us, requires multiple watchings. They are thick, okay? And what I mean by thick is that you're not going to get all of it in one sitting, okay? So, again, I don't know exactly how I feel about Shyamalan at this point. I think he has a potential of being a premiere director, which would be the top class, which is only held, in my personal opinion, by 5 directors, okay? Kubrick, John Ford, Sergei Eisenstein, Orson Welles, Alfred Hitchcock, and John Huston, okay? Or, I'm sorry, that's 6. So, excuse me. 6 directors. Those are the absolute best directors of all time, okay? And then underneath that are most directors that people go see that I would call master directors. I would even consider Michael Bay to be a master director, and that is heavily debatable, but I do think he is. I think that he provides a very, very solid film experience every single time. Certainly some of his early films, they don't age well, but sometimes they don't. But he has got his craft down so well that I would consider him a master director. And the film Pain and Gain was absolutely fantastic. I don't think people really realize that he was criticizing the steroid / all-American culture. Okay, I don't think that they got that irony, that he was critiquing it. Okay. So let's be clear about that. Okay, but back to Us. So, again, Us is about, it is a classic horror film, okay? As far as in just pure horror genre style films, I'm trying to think of what comes close to this. Because in its category, it's not quite as good as Night of the Living Dead or Dawn of the Dead, the originals, or even the remake of Night of the Living Dead. That was pretty fantastic, the 90s version. I'm trying to think of other films that it would come close to that are in just pure horror, because this is a pure horror film, okay? So this isn't like Get Out, where there is kind of social satire that's going on, and it blends into almost fantasy with some of the elements that go on, in particular with the mind control and things like that. That gets into more fantasy. Now, certainly the doppelganger aspect is fantasy, but this is done in a much different way. This is done to terrorize the people, which is a classic horror technique, that you build something to have like an arch nemesis, similar to Jason or Krueger or whoever. In this case, it was them, so they were fighting people of equal stature, because who's your own worst enemy but you? Because they know everything about you. Now, in this film, you're dealing with what are called the shadow people, okay? They live in a world completely different than ours, but they do exist, okay? And they want to point out that they're human, blah, 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 okay? Again, as I said before, there are spoilers. So this is the last time I'm going to say it. So, you're dealing with shadow people. Now, what people will not get from this film is that social commentary, which is we could all be those people if we were born in horrible conditions. Okay, that's the only social message that he made, and it wasn't because they were black or white or anything like that, Mexican or whatever. It's because they were born in poor conditions. Okay, there's also a reference to rabbits, which you've seen. The symbolism there is that rabbits breed, and I'm pulling back to the fact that poor people tend to breed a lot. There is definitely numbers, sociological numbers that can back that up. They, in essence, they devour these rabbits raw in the shadow world, and that's a symbolism that they have to devour themselves in order to survive. Sort of. Again, his message may be completely different. It doesn't matter. It's not really that important, because you get the basic symbolism of it. And there's a lot more that goes into it, because they use scissors and different things like that. I'm not going to elaborate on all the symbolism. It is very dense and very thick. Like I said, this is a very, very good quality film if you like symbolism. Okay, and it was action packed. There was a lot of action. Okay, the only major critique I have of it is that some of the dialogue was a little bit off center. Now, maybe if I had been in an audience that was a little bit more rich or excited to see it, or whatever you call it, I would have got a different response. But it did not encapsulate my particular audience particularly well, and it should have, because it was funny dialogue. A lot of it was like when they kill a bunch of the shadow people, they say, "Well, do we at least get their car now?" It's just stuff like that. It's just offhanded, like dark humor, which is fun. Dark humor is definitely, of all the humors, one of the more mature ones, besides satire. Period. So, you're dealing with that. But this was an intrinsically interesting story from start to beginning, which is why I'm recommending that you do go see this. If you wanted to know about it, you do know a little bit about it. I'm not going to give you hardly any more spoilers because I want to save some of it for you. But you're talking about what is the ultimate enemy of yourself, which is yourself. And you can mix that up in a lot of metaphor too. But ultimately, this film is a good one. And it's definitely worth watching. I wouldn't call it appropriate for children, but it's not so inappropriate that you can't take them to a certain degree. It's there's not a lot of like crudity and sexual nature or anything, which is what most people don't take children to go see. There is language for sure, but this is a family. There's a father, a mother, a son who is younger than the sister. And they take on a very hard subject, which is themselves that are trying to hurt them. It is very interesting. It is very, very, very much worth watching. But I will stress, in my opinion, it's just not as good as Get Out. But it doesn't mean that it's not good. It is still a fantastic film. I'm not sure what the process was behind the writing of this one. I would actually like to get the commentary on this one to see what his thought process was on this particular one, because he went complete horror on this, which he said in, I saw it on Instagram on Monkey Paws Studio, because I do follow them, because I am a big fan of his work so far. He said that this would be a classic horror film, and he was absolutely correct. This is a classic horror film. I don't know if he may have wrote it for a traditional African American audience, though, because there is a certain concept in watching cinema in the theater with the African American culture, which is called the talk back, which is where, if an idiot goes down into a basement, somebody will yell out, "Don't go down there," or whatever. This is something that is in the culture. I don't know if it still exists in the culture, because I unfortunately don't get a lot of exposure here in South Dakota to watching that type of cinema with an African American audience. I wish I did. I would love to have more diversity in the films that I watch, with audiences in particular, because you can learn a lot about how good a film is by watching an audience's reaction to it. You really can. Like here in South Dakota, I get a lot of conservative culture watching. Like when I went to go see American Sniper, or the documentary They Shall Not Be Forgotten, different things like that. You get a lot more pull in those directions, which is military and things like that in this particular area, which is fine. But it doesn't really give a good idea of like the whole diverse audience, because Jordan did not write this for just an African American audience. He wrote this for everyone. This is not a subject film to just that particular audience. So and he succeeded very admirably for a second film. When the expectations are so high, I think that he did as well as any person could, given those circumstances. Because in many ways, this film was as good as The Sixth Sense. And what did Shyamalan follow it up with? I think it's The Village, but I'm not 100% for sure. Which, in my opinion, is one of the best films of all time, in the top 50 for sure. I would put it in about 33 or so. But that was a completely different reason for that being something like that. And whereas Peele chose to entertain the audience instead of preach to them, which is a very, very awesome thing. I enjoy that. I enjoy to be entertained, And I think that most audience members, about 90% of the audience that goes to see a film, wants to be entertained, not preached to. But he did it subtly because he gave you, if you wanted to be preached to, he gave you the symbolism there. Which, again, I can't say enough how impressed I am with Jordan Peele at this point in his career. He's a phenomenal director. I will definitely go see every film until I feel he's either dropped off or whatever, which could happen, but I doubt it. I just think that he is driven by some kind of internal force that is a magnitude on which I have not seen in. Well, the last great director to live was Kubrick. And obviously, Eyes Wide Shut was not his best film, but he died during it, and it usually took him a long time to make films anyway. So when you're really talking about his last film, you're talking about Full Metal Jacket. So, and I would argue that that is a masterpiece as well. I haven't seen, that was probably the last great directed film I have seen, other than a handful of directors that have done really good things, but for whatever reason have not been able to fulfill their end of the bargain to get into the premier director status. I do believe Jordan is capable of it. I can't express enough how much that even for a straight horror film, which is incredibly hard to make in any way, shape, or form great, this is still a Criterion Collection piece, which means that it is still cataloged as being an excellent film worth watching. Okay? So, you're experiencing right now the greatness of this director's visions. Again, as I said before, you're going to have to watch it multiple times because there's a lot that goes on in this. Okay? It is slow. It is slow at beginning and end, but he ties it together so well. The middle is he keeps it pretty moving and action heavy. Okay, so again, you're not gonna not be entertained by this film, and if you're looking for something to do, go see this movie. Especially if you can go see it at like a discount night or something like that. Just try to do it as cheaply as possible. That's what I do. I watch tons of films, and I always try to go for the discount as much as I can. Even for Avengers Endgame, I will try to go see it on Tuesday night here at AMC when it's $5. Because I see so many films. Sometimes I even wait for them to go to our local theater, which is the Elks, which is a fantastic theater. It's great. Now, I say that full well knowing that my brother-in-law owns that, but I do want to stress that it is a fantastic theater, and if you went, you would enjoy it. And because it has a balcony. How long has it been since you've been in the theater with a balcony? Oh my gosh. Years? And the popcorn is really, really good too. I think the conglomerate popcorns like AMC and stuff like that, they're okay. But they're not anywhere near what the Elks popcorn is, or just a theater that actually has to excel in those things in order to sell tickets. But I'm approaching 18 minutes, so until then, Auf Wiedersehen.